Hi, and welcome to What's Cooking with Rochelle. Today we are going to make blueberry scones, one of my personal favorites, kind of a scone snob. So the difference between making a great scone and a scone is a scone should be really moist in the inside and crispy on the outside. If it's dry on the inside, no good. So one of the things that will keep it from being dry on the inside is not adding too much flour. I'm purposely making a small amount because scones really only are good for a day or two. They do dry out after that. So you're gonna wanna make them when you're gonna wanna use them. So we have a cup of all-purpose flour. And then I did get a little extra out because we're gonna need that when we're actually mixing the scones and making them into the shapes that we want. I have about a cup and a half of blueberries because I love blueberries. Now, if you don't love blueberries, no worries. You can make any other fruit that you want in it. And if you'd like some tips on what kind of fruit you could use, please just let me know. We have a little bit of what we call finishing or sanding sugar. We're going to put that on the top. That is the secret ingredient to make it look like you got them in the bakery. Then we also have a quarter cup of regular white sugar. I've got half a teaspoon of cinnamon. I've got a little bit of baking powder here. This is about a teaspoon and a half, teaspoon and a quarter. I've got about 3/4 of a teaspoon of vanilla. This is vanilla that is regular, not imitation. If you're using imitation vanilla, you might want to increase it because it doesn't give you quite as much flavor. This is a quarter cup of cream. Now, I didn't have heavy cream in my house, so a lot of people don't sometimes. You don't have to use heavy cream. Heavy cream basically has more butter in it, so more fat. I'm using half and half today. If you didn't have that, you could also use evaporated milk. Those are all good substitutes. And then I got out the salt. We're just gonna use a pinch of salt, about 1/4 of a teaspoon or so. Now, since we're splitting the recipe in half, we're actually gonna be using half of an egg. And I did this on purpose because you see that and you're like, well, how the heck do I do that? So one of the first things we're going to do is crack our egg into a bowl. Okay? And then I'm simply going to beat the egg. Okay, so you can see that's pretty much combined. Now the first part we're going to do is our wet ingredients. The reason we're doing the wet ingredients first is the butter, which is we're using a half a cup of butter. The butter is actually in the freezer. You want to have it literally frozen. And so we're not going to get that out until we're ready to go because we want to keep it frozen. That is also one of the keys to making a great scone. So we're going to put all of our wet ingredients in here. So in goes the half and half. We're only going to use half of this egg. So I'm just going to gauge it. And then we're going to dump the rest in. And put the other half aside. We're also going to put the vanilla in. And we're just going to simply mix this together. And we're going to be adding this to our dry ingredients. So our dry ingredients, we have the cup of flour, the 1/4 cup of sugar, the cinnamon, and the baking powder. And then I'm simply just going to add a little bit of salt. Voila. And we're just going to give this a quick stir. Okay, so you can see how that's all combined. The cinnamon's been evenly mixed with the flour. That's the main thing you're trying to do so that it has an even taste. Now I'm going to use a box grater. This is called a box grater because, as you can see, it's in the shape of a box. It has different coarseness of grindings. We're going to use the bigger one for the butter, just to make it a little easier. I'm going to get it out of the freezer. Now I am using unsalted butter, and I recommend that. Most of the time when I'm cooking, you're going to see I'm using unsalted butter. So to make my life easier, since I'm using a box grater so I don't cut my fingers, I know this is 1 cup, so I'm going to use half of this, okay? So what I'm literally going to do is hold the box grater and go like this. And you can see how, I'll show you, it's making these beautiful little butter peels. Now, it's really hard to do that if you don't have frozen butter. So, okay. So now we have our butter. We're mixing in our flour so it's all combined. Now you can do this the hard way, which is not having frozen butter, just having refrigerated butter. And then with the fork and knife, literally sit there and cut through it. That takes a lot longer than what you saw I just did. Okay, so we're going to add our wet to our dry. And this is another thing, you don't want to over stir. You want to keep that butter separated. And I'll show you, we're just going to mix it to it's combined. And if you're noticing it's a little too dry, just add a little bit more liquid. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is, of course, add our blueberries. Now, normal people don't add this many, but like I said, I like blueberries. And I like my blueberries to be moist and juicy and give a bite of blueberry in every bite. Okay, so now that our scones are combined, we're gonna pop this in the refrigerator and just get it really cold, all the ingredients, before we roll it out. It'll make it a little easier to roll and finish. So I'm gonna go do that and start my oven. You're gonna wanna preheat your oven to about 350, 375 degrees. We're gonna start it at that and then turn it down to about 325 when they're about half done. Okay, so our oven is preheated and I chose 350 degrees because I like mine really moist inside. Our scones have been sitting in the refrigerator for about 10-15 minutes just to kind of get that butter and make sure it's super hard. And so I'm gonna get this out. Okay. And your bowl should be a little chilled. You should kind of feel that. So what we're gonna do is just sprinkle some flour down. The purpose of this is just to make sure it doesn't stick. You don't want a lot of extra flour on the scones. Again, flour, too much flour is gonna make your scones really stiff and not as moist and wonderful. So we're just gonna plop this down. And literally all I'm doing is patting it into a little bit of a shape, a rectangle. And this step is simply for aesthetic reasons, to be honest. But you can see I've kind of got a rectangle. Okay, now if you don't have a bench scraper, you can use a knife, but a bench scraper is ideal. And basically what this is going to do is it's going to allow the cutting of the scones without it sticking too much. Okay? So I told you I made half a recipe, and I did that so that you could learn about cutting an egg. The other thing that maybe you don't know about scones is you can make them dairy-free, vegan, simple as replacing the, and I'm gonna brush off this extra flour, guys. Again, too much flour makes unhappy scones. If you want smaller ones, cut them in half. And if you don't have this fancy pastry brush, use your hand. Again, cooking should be fun, and you know, make it personal for yourself. You know, you can also see how I'm putting space between the scones. That's kind of important. You don't want them crowded. They will expand a little bit as they're cooking, number one. And number two, it'll allow for even baking. That one's for me. Even baking when there's space between them. Okay, so we got our scones cut, and you saw how easy that was, right? They kind of look almost like what you get in the store right now. So we're gonna take our pastry brush and a little bit of cream and just dollop the tops. Again, if you don't have heavy cream, like I'm using half and half. If you don't have half and half, use whole milk. You can always add butter, melted butter to it to make it more fattening. And if you want to cut calories, then use milk with less. Now the whole purpose of that is so that this sanding sugar, finishing sugar, is going to stick. Let's see, we're just sprinkling the top. There's no like master science to this. But it truly makes a great difference, I think, in the finished product. Okay, scones are ready. We're gonna put them in the oven. We are going to check them in 15 minutes, see if we need to lower the temperature. Generally, they're gonna take about 20-25 minutes to cook, okay? All right, so it's time for the big reveal. Our scones are done. They've been in the oven for just about 20 minutes because that's how I like them. All right. Let's show you these beautiful scones. So you could see they did expand a little bit. They shouldn't expand too much if you put them in the refrigerator. So we get our scone out. And scones. Blueberry scones with lots of blueberries. And let me just show you. Doesn't that look delicious? Right out of the oven, piping hot. Absolutely amazing. I hope you enjoyed blueberry scones. And thank you again. Look forward to seeing you in the next episode of What's Cooking with Rochelle. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.